Hi, guys. Thank you for watching. This is Essence of Science, and today we're talking about the science of ice. I'm Amanda Armagost.
I'm Dr. Abbasi for Essence. That reminds me of that song from 90s, Ice, Ice Baby. Do you know that
All
song?
right, stop. Collaborate and listen. Yeah, everyone knows that.
Wow, ice, obviously, do you believe?
Ice is something I wanted to start off by saying that ice is something that we really take for granted, especially in the US, especially in the summer, because we were talking about this last week. Some countries, they don't really use ice for drinks.
Like in Germany.
Yeah, in Europe, they don't really use ice for drinks because it's not as hot. But here in the US, it gets so hot and it gets so cold also. So I think it's a really unique place to talk about ice.
Now, there's a story that Saladin, in the Crusades, he was very benevolent to Crusaders. By the way, Crusaders were really mean people. They did lots of bad things. Not everybody did bad things then, but they weren't really good people. But he tried to woo the Crusaders by inviting them for peace talk and give them an ice dessert, something sweet with ice. And we are talking about Jerusalem and that area where practically ice was unknown. But he had access to mountains of what we call today Kurdistan.
Oh, sure.
And they were that's what that means. They were ice-covered snow
icy
peaks there that's year-round, or ice. And one of the things that I was really surprised, in Iran, I used to go for climbing. I would go really high in the mountain, and Iran is mostly desert, especially central and southern Iran. The desert starts, where temperature goes to like 100, 110, and so on. So when I was going climbing, within a half a day of climbing, or maybe 3/4 of a day, I was in places in the heat of the summer. There's still snow.
Yeah.
Nice. And as a matter of fact, and that's one of the things people don't know, that the ski resorts in Iran, in northern Tehran, is one of the best.
Oh, I've seen photos. They look gorgeous. Yeah.
So, and but the idea that that you can use ice in your beverage and in your dessert, in your food, and so on, is something that came from knowing if it's too hot, stuff spoil faster. Your food spoil faster.
At Perkins, there was no AC in the kitchen, so in the summer the kitchens would be like 105, 110. And we would put bowls of ice. Well, first of all, we would take towels, get them wet, and freeze them for the cooks, and then the cooks would put them around their neck. But we would get bowls of ice and stick the bowl of ice in front of a fan so that, I don't know if it worked or not, but they said that the cold air blowing when the ice was melting really helped a lot.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Where was the first refrigerator built?
I don't know, Britain?
No.
Where?
In central Iran.
Oh, okay. I should have known that.
But do you know what it was? It wasn't what you think of refrigerator.
Was it a Morris?
The word for refrigerator in Iran means hole and ice. These two words, if you combine them, yach, chal. Yach means ice, chal means hole. Just a hole. So what they discovered, that, if they have a very deep hole where you don't have the heat of even in central Iran, where it's really hot, and then you put cold water or ice in that, it can actually last for a long time.
Well, that makes sense, because anyone who knows about bunnies knows that bunnies burrow because the temperature is better underground. If it's hot out, it's cooler underground. If it's cold out, it's warmer.
Yeah, it is very. The earth is a good insulator. If they had ice in winter, they put it down, and that would last till the next. And then they notice if they put their so on there, it can last actually a lot longer. And usually, before we had refrigerators, something called cool box.
Yeah, that's
What do you know about that?
I do remember learning about them in elementary school because when I learned about them, I thought that that was like the most insane cool thing ever. I thought, how did the ice not melt in the summer? Hopefully it's not wrong. What I know about a cool box is we would put large chunks of ice.
You still had them? Do you
No, we
remember?
learned about them in
Oh, you
school
learned in
because
the school, yeah.
I lived by the Great Lakes.
Yeah, yeah.
But they put large chunks of ice in the box, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the box just stays cooler because of the ice.
Yep. Now, if you look at the history of United States, where were the first metropolitan areas and major population centers?
Like
Mostly in the north, right?
I was gonna say Santa Fe,
Well, no, mostly in the north. I mean, when you
like along the
America got,
Great Lakes and the Mississippi River.
yeah, mostly the north,
Mhm.
like New York, Boston,
Oh,
Washington,
sure.
Philadelphia, and so on.
Northeast.
Not central and south of United States. Now, south of United States start growing first when we had refrigeration, because you have to feed people. In north, we had more access to water would freeze in winter. We had easier access to frozen water, ice, and they would have this contraption that they would insulate it. So we understood that, if you insulate it, the temperature stays the same. Don't think we knew. So it would be two spaces. On top, you would put the ice, and and as well we knew when the air get colder, it sinks, get heavier. So we would put the ice on the top and our food in the bottom, and then the water would go a different channel, but this cold air would descend and keep our meat, our food cooler, which would last longer.
But we also did other things, right? Like packing it with straw to make the ice itself last
For the
longer.
insulation and so on, we understood once we started. Okay, well, in the north, easy. Every house, you have a frozen pond, you have a big hole, Persian refrigerator. You just pack it in winter, use it all summer.
Wait, sorry, I have a question. Is this one of those things where we just happened to start knowing stuff at the same time, or did we learn the refrigerator from the Persians?
I think most of people in Europe learned the refrigeration methods from this specific refrigerators or yakhchals or cool boxes from a city in Iran that's called Kerman,
Okay.
which is in the middle of the desert. But with that method, I mean,
If it works there, then they know it's going to work at home.
Actually, they even use that to cool their houses.
Okay.
So either way, so in north, and that is why population, in my opinion, grew in north of the United States, because it's all about food and how you can support with the necessary, food and other stuff that people need to grow. In the middle and the southern of the United States, we had population, but those big cities start grow after we had refrigeration. But until then, somebody came with a great idea. Hey, why don't we send these ice pieces from north to south in a train? Once we had trains, but that was middle of the 1800, the middle of the 1800 and so on. And then some people watch that, those damn things, they melt, especially if your train weren't as fast as today.
And probably especially if you're transporting them in the summer.
Yeah, and then some people came with the idea to insulate those trains. And then some people as well notice, if you want to keep just a chunk of ice as long as possible, mix things to it like sawdust or straw and so on. They last almost forever. As a matter of fact, United States Army in Second World War, in First and Second World War, were U-boats. They were just sinking all our ships. Imagine, only 2 of 10 ships that would go from America to Europe would be sunken by the U-boats. They came out with an idea to create an artificial iceberg, like a ship, but that made of ice, and with the refrigerant and so on, with all of that. But to keep that ice, they found out that, like, if you add just some straw or sawdust to the ice, it can last like 100 times longer than a regular ice. And that was really even sustainable enough to for them to make a consider it.
Because the sawdust back then was still garbage, right? Like they didn't reuse it really for much.
Well, yeah, I mean, they didn't reuse it still. Most of that is not reused. Most of that's still put back in the earth
Yeah,
as a
most. But I'm saying
fertilizer.
back then they didn't have a point of
Yeah,
reusing it.
yeah, and
Because
this,
now they take sawdust to make like composite materials. Like one of my friends, it's not sawdust, but one of my friends, it's kind of cool. Her countertops and cabinets are made out of sunflower seed shells.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, anything with the cellulose, it can be used as for composite material. But I think what was important in mid 1800 is that there was a huge industry to transfer um, ice from north to south. And in some places, that was a one-time event a year, and they brought a huge chunk of ice.
I was curious, what time of year would they go up and get it? Because I'm
Well,
sure
it should be winter because that would be where there's the least possibility for the ice to melt. And once it was in a town, they would put it in a deep hole again, same thing. And then that would last them for a while.
and were
Now,
they going to the Arctic? Where
no,
were they going to
New
get the
England,
ice?
one of the biggest export of New England. You should change this to essence of history. One of the biggest um, uh, no export of New England
Was ice?
was ice. You would see these people with their donkeys and big saws. They just walk across the lake, cut it in big chunks. And I have lived in New England. Ice can get, I mean, in Minnesota, as well, ice can get really thick.
Mm-hmm. I know that I don't know how long ago it was, but that they used to take them from like Lake Superior, all those
Mm-hmm.
other lakes. And this was when we were populated on the Mississippi River. And then they would take boats down the Mississippi to drop off the ice.
And that's as well, they would get it from anywhere they could. They would pile it up in an insulated cart and send it south. And that was a huge source of income. But that was really ice from the lake.
Ice.
So, in the water in the lake, there are more than just water, right?
Yeah, that's always like when I heard about it my first time, I was thinking that is so disgusting.
But at that time,
But the lakes were cleaner too back then.
way cleaner then. And you didn't use fertilizer for.
And you weren't using the ice to drink. You were using it to.
No,
You were?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
That's pretty hardcore.
Well, until just recently, drinking just water was the most dangerous thing you could do.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons in most of the Europe, they would even just add a little bit of a wine to water for children, because water is what would make you sick.
And the alcohol would maybe kill the stuff, or
Yeah, no, not maybe. Yeah, alcohol would literally kill the bugs and make the water safer. And watered down wine and beer, that is one of the reasons beer was growing so fast, is because literally uh, water was unsafest thing to drink. So no, they would get that there, and then they would use it for whatever they wanted to use.
was it expensive? Like, could everyone afford it?
No. I told you that Saladin offered the things that only kings could afford. Imagine somebody has to go to the tip of the mountain and get that ice and bring it all the way down. And you can imagine that not much of it survives.
Yeah, right.
So only kings and queens could afford to have a ice in their.
What about in the
drinks.
States, though? Like, did the average person have an ice box? Or how long was it until the average person had an ice box?
I believe in the early 1900s, people start having really regularly cool boxes, not refrigerators, in their houses. And then
in the house or outside of the house?
Well, usually, if it's a, there were these natural cool boxes, meaning that in the ground, the hole, and so on, that would be outside. But the cool box, or what we call refrigerator, to the inside of the house, I think that was early 1900. People start having really that in the house.
Mhm.
And then initially that was just be the piece of ice that people would just walk in the streets, sell ice, and you would go and I still remember doing that in Iran.
Buying a block.
No, they would come in blocks that are like 10-inch by 10-inch by 3 or 4 feet, 4 feet, and they would just cut it in pieces and sell it to the people.
How did you transport it from the place to your house? In your hands, or?
Well, they would come to front of your house.
Oh, okay.
They would
I
come
was
with a
kind of
car.
picturing like they were stationed at
Oh no, you can
somewhere in the
as well go
street.
somewhere, and that would be cheaper. But
Yeah.
they would come to front of your house, and then you could buy it. And then that was, I still remember that actually.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And but then we had refrigerators, and that works by being compressing and decompressing certain gases. But because when the gas are decompressing, they absorb a lot of heat, and that heat can cool down things, and that's how refrigerators work. But the technology with that is about 100 years old, that it matured, that and that is obviously, we take it so for granted to have a
So for
refrigerator.
granted. Even just ice cream. We take ice cream so for granted.
Yeah, and that is obviously that it's a very recent situation that people can have just free access to ice cream. And as well, imagine if you did not have a refrigerator, how much more limited would you be in your dietary
That's why I
situation?
was wondering if it was like if somehow they just made it available for everyone because health purposes, so then you can have more stuff. But I guess back then also more people were like farming on their own, so they just had different, everything was different.
How often do you go grocery shopping?
Like unfortunately a couple times a week.
Now, in old ages, you would go at least once a day, at least.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But didn't the stores could afford to have a ice box.
Well, depending on the time, what year and
The
where
city.
exactly. Yeah, stores obviously, those when we start having refrigerators, like truly cooling the thing, they were size of a room or a house. They weren't size that you could put in your house. But but eventually, obviously, the technology matured enough that everybody can have a refrigerator in their house. Um, but I think it all comes back to that allowed for the population to grow by being able to keep. Now, even now, I mean, what percentage of the food you buy do you think it goes for waste? In the United States, that's about 30%.
Yeah, and
Even with refrigerator.
and most of the food that I buy goes in the fridge.
And imagine now you don't have access to that.
I
And
know, yeah.
so the situation really changed. There's lots of, and another thing that there are these old stories about this banquet in castles for rich people, where they're eating meat that is maggots are on it and so on. So our sensibility for food that we eat is much higher now than it was used to see. I have seen you you look at the bread that has a little mold in it and so on, and
Yeah.
you get nervous.
No, not that I don't get nervous. I don't eat it.
You get nervous when I eat it.
Yeah, when you eat it.
So, but you see, our sensibility
Sensitivity.
for eating food that's less than perfect is so much higher now. It's almost.
Oh, okay, come on. Now it's a little bit ridiculous.
What?
Well, this is different. This is not the same topic, but imperfect foods, that is getting absurd. Like
That the banana has to be certain shape or
certain size. And now they actually have a company called Imperfect Foods that rescues all the food that, like, if it's a tomato with a little, it's not a perfectly round tomato, it's an oval tomato. No one at the store wants to buy it apparently. So now they have a store or like a company.
But they're tastier.
Exactly, because they're most of the time they're heirloom. But yeah, so this company is called Imperfect Foods, and it actually like rescues if a carrot has two carrots. from getting thrown away.
Actually, I prefer those.
Me too. I prefer the weird ones.
So, coming back to ice is actually ice and civilization has been really parallel development. As a matter of fact, you can see the level of a civilization with how much access to ice, physical ice, a civilization has. And that was one of the reasons, I think, in the Civil War, North won against the South.
Because they could have ice, so they could probably eat better.
They had access to ice. By having access to ice, they could accumulate more population. More population in one place promotes civilization, industry. So North was always more industrialized than the South because there were more people out there, and you can have more people there because you can feed them, and ice is a big part of it.
Well, and another thing is like if you can preserve your food longer, you can have more nutrients, so you can become stronger.
And have more people for the same amount of area, definitely. Imagine that obviously even without that sensitivity to bad food and so on, it is just the food just wouldn't last enough.
Exactly.
So it would more of the food go to waste in South than in North.
Well, because I'm just imagining, even on my backyard deck garden, if a tomato sits on the plant for too long, it's going to go bad pretty quickly, or a bird or a bug is going to get it. So you have to pick it off. I guess a tomato is not a good example because you shouldn't put them in the fridge. But then by the time you pick a tomato, you only have a certain number of days before you have to eat it. But if you can put it in the fridge, that time goes higher.
Why shouldn't you put the tomato in the fridge?
You shouldn't put tomatoes in the fridge because it makes them lose their flavor.
I think the reason they lose their flavor is most of the fruits that we eat today, they are picked immature. They're not have been given enough to accumulate those flavors because we want them to ripen while they're being transported to the end users.
That's true. What you're saying is true, but this for tomatoes is different than what you're talking about.
And that is why the tomatoes you plant in your garden always taste.
Anything you plant in your garden is going to taste better. This is kind of crazy. I saw a video one time of a pool in Dubai, a house pool, and they had to, it's because it gets so hot in Dubai. They had giant blocks of ice, like the size of this table. I'm not kidding. Probably as tall as this table. So probably I would say like 5 by 3. It took 3 men to push this block of ice into the pool, and the kids go crazy. They put the ice in the pool, and the kids all want to jump on the ice because it's so hot out. So I think ice is very valued, and we don't give it. We really take it for granted.
Now, coming back to that, imagine there were lots of areas in the world they have never seen ice. Those kids have never seen ice. There are lots of stories of many of these immigrant and refugees when they come to US for the first time, they see snow, that the kids cannot believe their eyes. What that thing is because they have never seen that. So obviously in Europe everybody knows ice and snow and so on,
and in the north of the US everyone knows it. Some people in the south don't get a chance to go up north, so they haven't seen it.
When I was in Galveston, I was there for 8 years. Only once it snowed, and that was actually on 24th of December. So, and it was like half an inch of snow, which lasted only half a day or a day. And so imagine, you have never seen ice or snow in your life, and you come to Minnesota.
Yeah, actually, the crime rates in the north go down in the winter.
Well, because it's ice. It's
There's
cold.
no opportunity. You really can't.
You freeze to death before you can commit a crime.
And all the stairs are super slippery and dangerous because they have like an inch of ice on them.
Especially in the night.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching. This was Essence of History, and we talked about the history of ice. I'm Amanda.
I'm Dr. Abbasi for Essence.
Have a good day.